What's up, everyone? Welcome to this episode of Crystal Clear. We have a special guest, not a local guest today, which I'm really excited. Tammy Valicenti. So welcome, Tammy.
Thank you. It's a joy to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about divine alignment and divine timing. She reached out to my KB at Crystal Clear email. We had a conversation and she's like, well, where are you? Where I'm like, Sarasota. She's like, well, I'm going to be in Tampa in a couple weeks. And I'm like, well, let's do it. So here we are.
Divine timing. I love it.
Divine timing. And so tell us a little bit about what you do. What is it that I hate to even ask, what do you do? It's like, what brought you here today?
Well, I mean, ultimately it's my calling and doing what I absolutely love to do. I specialize in what I call transformation solution, which is a psychotherapy that specializes in specifically combining EMDR protocols with IFS or internal family systems protocols. And it's more transformative and effective than any one of those. So when we combine them, they go really deep, really fast. And it's really a short-term process.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that. And I'm familiar with what EMDR is and internal family systems because I've done all kinds of deep trauma healing for myself. But if you could take a moment to kind of explain to the audience what that is and kind of why it would be utilized in life.
Sure. So EMDR stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Reprocessing, and it was developed by Dr. Francine Shapiro about 35 years ago. And she realized that when she moved her eyes back and forth and thought about something disturbing, that became less disturbing. So she got really curious about it and developed this EMDR protocol, which is really effective for trauma and other things, panic, anxiety, things like that. It involves talking about what happened to you. Sometimes you don't even have to, which is great. And then adding bilateral stimulation, meaning any back and forth stimulation on your body. Could be eye movements, could be tapping back and forth. And that's super effective, like I said before, for trauma.
Yeah. And when I did that, actually, I had little clickers.
Yes.
Like I did the eye, but I also had little clickers. So I was going back and forth and talking and clicking. It was great. My ADD really loved it. I was like, oh, this is fun.
It can be really calming.
Yeah, for me, I loved it. I was made a game out of it. And then I'm like, okay, I'm supposed to be focusing on the stuff.
That's great.
I found that it really did make you feel kind of like, if anything, it helped me turn off my mind.
Yes.
It helps you kind of disconnect from the voice in the head.
Right.
And lets you release what you needs to be released, like you said, without all the kind of the shit coming all up.
Right. And what's really great about it, it's a real somatic modality. Like you said, it gets you out of your head. And once you're down in your body, now you can really process in a way that talk therapy is not going to do.
Right. But you also do that.
Yes, I also do that. So we add in some IFS to that. And I found over the years that in my practice that EMDR was effective to a certain point. And there were these things I kept bumping up against in treatment in my own and with my clients. And so I added some parts work in. Back in the day, it was called kind of like inner child work.
Yeah.
And Dick Schwartz made the parts work really quite famous and more spiritual and deeper than just simply parts work. So I kind of weave some of that in.
Okay.
So when I hear something like a part of me's feeling, we'll go right for that. And then we'll interface and interact with that part. Where do you feel it in your body? What do you notice? What does it need to tell you? What does it want to show you? What does it need from you?
What does it need to let go of?
Right. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, I know I kind of grew up in you just work through it. You push it down, you go, whether it was conditioned from my environment or from myself with athletics and stuff, it was like, oh, I'm feeling this. I just got to push through. I just got to run through.
Shake it off.
And then I got to a point of stillness and it was like, okay, it's all coming up. What's happening? It just so happened to be postpartum. So it was double layer.
Wow.
Which is when I dove super deep into healing my own trauma and understanding my patterns and all of that. So tell us a little bit about the internal family systems. What the IFS. How does that really show up in practice? What would that look like?
So it's really the belief that we are all different parts, that we don't just have this one kind of ego or one state, but that we do have this this self that we're born with, capital S self, which is in whatever language you want to use, divine, aligned, spirit, soul, God, and that part of us is perfect, connected, and aligned, like I said before. And everything else, emotions, sensations in the body, any patterns, those can be parts that are working really hard for us to protect us, to help us. And oftentimes they are getting in the way of us feeling ease and peace. So for example, if one part is working really hard and it's always doing something for us to feel better, maybe it's my go-to is anger. That part is a little too loud. So like an orchestra, we want to get that part to play nicely with everything else. And the way to do that is to get in touch with it, with the self, and get closer to it. It's kind of counterintuitive. You'd think that by getting closer to something that's wreaking havoc on our lives or creating barriers or something else, that it would make it stronger or louder. It's the opposite. As we make contact, then we can heal it.
Right. I mean, I kind of think of that as, you think of a screaming child. Like, what do? We approach them with compassion and care and understanding. And it settles their system. It settles their mindset. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, I am safe now. I can let whatever is upsetting me go, or I can, so that's what came up for me when you were saying that, like, like just thinking that, because I mean, healing is scary. Let's just think of it. Depending on what you've gone through. I've done a lot of different trauma and resiliency trainings and things like that, and programming for Resilient Retreat, where we do, survivors programs, so people that have survived trauma and abuse, but we also have like helping professions. So it's very, different dynamic. You have to kind of know your audience. Sometimes we have rentals, people just like you and I, busy business owners that want to come in and have a woo-saw day and do some programming.
So
and
nice.
But it's interesting because I feel like it always goes deep in some way or another. And it's, it may not start out that way. We're doing a journaling program and maybe one person speaks up and talks about why they're there.
Right.
But then by the end of the 1 hour, most people have said something.
That's incredible.
Whether it's just like, I'm grateful for being here.
Yeah.
And I always like to tell them, this is not for me. This is for you. If something's too deep, write it down, take it with you, circle back. There are resources out there, but it's just giving ourselves permission to face it.
Yes.
But face it with courage and compassion.
Absolutely. And what you're talking about is connection.
Yes.
And once we can connect with others, connect with ourselves, that's really where the healing happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I know we talked about this kind of on our get to know each other call, but I loved it. Your approach is kind of similar to mine, like with the empowerment coaching. It's like, we could have one session and I tell you to give yourself permission to do what you need to do. And that's it. Or we may talk weekly for 2 years. Like, it just depends on the level of accountability, the level of, depth, people, where they want to go, what they want to do in their life and what their goals are. But I always looked at that, even with my background in fitness, is, it's my job as a coach or a, practitioner or, a resource for people to give them the tools and the resources they need to succeed. Like, I have 4 children. I don't have room for all the things all the time. I have to take care of myself first because I realize that is a necessity.
Yes.
But really setting people up for success. And that doesn't necessarily, like, some people I've even been like, wow, I'm really hearing you and I understand where your heart is, what your goals are. And I think this person is going to be a great fit for you.
Yep.
I don't even think I'm the coach.
Right.
And owning that, like, it's coming from a place where, wow, I know the perfect fit for you. I feel like it's almost a gift of like connections. I think that is literally one of my life purposes. I had a lunch with someone this week and it was like, wow, you have to meet X, Y, and Z. And even same when I was talking to you, I'm like, oh my gosh, so many things, so many people I have to connect you with. But that I think is key, and you express that as well. So tell us a little bit about like what it would look like. What is it you do? You do retreats and things as well, and
I
a lot of
do.
different collaborations
Sure.
and
I do individual psychotherapy. I also do intensives, which can be, 2 hours, 3 hours, or 3 days.
mhm.
And I also offer retreats with my retreat partner, Ilana
Okay.
Siegel, and we do a retreat called Women Who Want More.
Oh, I love
And
that.
it is going in to rise up, and it's going
Oh,
deep to expand
I love
and
that.
pushing to the edges of our fears.
Okay.
And I really see in the work in these retreats and in my sessions that I am simply the guide.
Mhm.
I'm guiding you into your body. You have everything you need inside of you,
Mhm.
and through the process, without telling you that, through the process, that realization unfolds.
And it's really being the conduit. Just like a
Hmm.
massage therapist, or I had
Yeah.
someone a craniosacral therapist, or it's giving that person, holding the space.
Yes. Yes.
Holding them the space, giving them a safe place
Hmm.
to be like, you can do this.
Right. Right.
Because we all have life that we've lived. There's been conditions, there's been teachers or environmental factors that have,
Hmm.
maybe shut our voices down or not
Hmm.
allowed us to, or given us the full permission to be our authentic selves.
Absolutely.
And there is so much power in that. Not
Yes.
an egoic power, but like a personal, authentic power and being like, I have a voice and it matters.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't matter what's happened to me. Everything's happened to everyone. Like everyone has their shit. Like everyone
Right.
has unprocessed life. Everyone has all the things. It's a
Right.
matter. It's like I actually did a podcast not long ago. What are you going to do about it?
Right. Right.
It's like
Right.
now the ball is in your court. What are you going to do about it?
Right. Deny it, ignore it.
Right. Face it, own
Run for
it,
it.
take charge of it and just see where it leads. And I feel like I'm in
Mhm,
a place right now where dove deep into my own healing,
mhm,
really kind of reevaluated life, got into a different place, started the podcast sharing it, which turned into this beautiful empowerment business and retreats and all this other stuff. And now I'm
incredible.
like, my goal for the past 2 years actually has been I'm just going to see where it goes,
Mhm,
surrendering to the flow,
mhm,
see what comes up. All
mhm.
of these beautiful connections and all these things have been happening. So it's like, okay, this is flowing in a really cool direction.
That's
And I'm going
amazing.
to let it flow as long as it's supposed to, but
Uh-huh.
then knowing when to pull back. There's been things that come up that it's like, that doesn't feel like it's in alignment.
Mhm.
I don't have the space for that right now.
Right.
So I think that that's something. I don't know if you experienced this as well when you first got into your practice and, like, oh, like it's a shiny new thing. Like, this looks fun. I want to go here. I want to do this. I want to do
Yes.
this. And then you're like, oh, okay, too much.
Overwhelmed. Yes
Overwhelmed.
to all the things.
Doesn't feel like some don't feel in alignment. It's
Mhm,
exhausting me.
mhm,
So, how do you, and I'm sure you run into this with the ladies that you work with in retreats and
mhm,
whatnot, how would you kind of guide someone through that? Because I think it's a big step when you're starting something new,
mhm,
starting a business,
mhm,
starting a new journey with a sober life or like healing journey or
mhm.
new career. How to teach and navigate that balance.
Right. I think it's talking to helping that person talk to the part that's driving that bus.
Right.
The person that's always saying yes. Maybe it's a people pleaser.
Mhm.
Maybe it's the part that is doing things all day, like I think you had
Mhm.
mentioned earlier. So
Mhm.
that, like, if I stop, what am I going to feel? That feels overwhelming,
Right.
right? So gently getting really curious, as you
Mhm.
said, with some compassion, and what is that part need from me? What is
Mhm.
that part's story? And
Right.
so slowing down and understanding that, I think, is
Mhm.
definitely part of that process. And then that allows that part to step back a little bit and the authentic self to show up more about, what do I want to really say yes to?
Right.
Now that voice is a little louder, right?
Mhm. And
Um,
creating that open space.
right.
That's one thing I've really been really trying to set my boundaries on for myself is when something falls off,
Hmm.
not filling the space.
Right.
Like if I
That's
have a
tough.
cancellation, if I have, something that shifts over the weekend, if I have
Hmm.
like, okay, well, sometimes it's like, oh, wow, now I can fit this thing that I've really been wanting to do in there,
Hmm.
but not filling it with busy work. I feel like there's a difference there. Like something
Absolutely.
clears my day. Ooh, I'm going to go take a walk. because I know that that's going to fill me up for the rest of the day instead of I'm going to plug in 6 meetings in 2 hours. It's just little tidbits. So I feel like that's really something that I would really emphasize to
Intentionality.
yes,
Hmm.
having that intentionality. I use that
Hmm.
word a lot, so I've been actually trying to cut back on using it because I feel like I use it in every podcast ever. But it's
Sorry.
true. No, it's perfect because it wasn't me saying it. But really being intentional
Right.
and setting, and at first I think it's great to be open
Hmm.
because that's how you figure out what direction it is you want to take.
Right. I agree.
But how did you get into all this? Like, that makes me curious. Like,
Uh-huh.
how did this path start for you? What did your previous life or path look like to get you
Oh, it was
here?
so circuitous, I have to say. But in a way, it wasn't because at a very young age, middle school or younger, I was called to do this. I wanted to be a child psychologist
Mm-hmm.
initially, and I really think, looking back at that young me, I was looking to save myself, honestly.
Yep.
Being raised in an alcoholic family of origin and being really lost, emotionally neglected in so many ways. I was looking for an out. I was looking for connection. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
it at the time. Anyway, I did end up going to get my degree to be a therapist, but the path that I took was more, again, it kept getting pulled, more of a calling, not a profession, not what I think I should do, but really what made sense viscerally. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was called to work with domestic violence, rape, and sexual assault. And then in working with trauma, I realized I can't do that without understanding addiction.
Right.
So I did some of that.
Mm-hmm.
And all along the way, I'm doing my own work.
Right. And I bet that was so healing too.
Incredible. Yeah, incredible. And for me, EMDR was limiting as well. And so I
Mm-hmm.
was looking for something else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and talk therapy wasn't doing it. I knew I had to kind of shift things on a visceral level. So after my EMDR therapist for a while, maybe 2,
Mm-hmm.
found an IFS therapist,
Mm-hmm.
learned that. That was absolutely transformative for
Okay.
me at that point. So doing my own work along the way really informed how I work with people,
Yeah.
you know?
I mean, and I think for most of us that have these passions to help and do things, it's from our own life experience.
Absolutely.
Very similar. Like my
Hmm.
grew up around substance abuse of all different kinds.
Hmm.
Lost my father at a very young age, so kind of lived through secondary grief and just and as an empath and as a a feeler,
Hmm.
a responder. I don't know if you've done life languages, but I'm like a
Yeah.
very high responder, influencer, mover personality, so it was like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm feeling everyone's junk, what am I going to do with it? But
Yeah.
it's interesting that you say you knew from a young age. I was like, I want to go to school for psychology and I want to help gymnasts and dancers not go down the same eating disorder path, and then I
Hmm.
started taking psychology classes and I'm like, this is not for
No.
me right now. And so I did
Interesting.
exercise science instead,
Huh.
which at the time, now looking back, I realized was
Hmm.
my coping mechanism, like exercise and moving my body. That was how I coped.
Hmm.
That was how I got through a life of, now knowing it was CPTSD.
Hmm.
I didn't know then because
Hmm.
I felt great because I was balancing it with all the good hormones from exercise and moving my body and,
Huh. You
and
found a way.
yeah, found a way. Did brain scans with Dr. Amen in 2021
Hmm.
and then did them again in 2023 after diving deep into these different modalities and I don't have PTSD anymore. So
Incredible.
that was like my whole purpose for this podcast is
Hmm.
just bringing people about that have all these different resources and tools and life experiences and letting
Hmm.
people know they're not alone.
No, no.
We've all gone through something of the sort,
Right. It's true. It's true.
whether it's through that, like you said, going through understanding what addiction was,
Hmm.
understanding the psychology behind these different types of life situations we get into, it allowed me to heal and forgive and let
Hmm.
go of
Hmm. Hmm.
so much shit that wasn't mine I was carrying.
Right.
Like
Right.
I was carrying all the things, generational stuff from all sides.
Yeah.
And, now realizing that, but also made me realize I have to reevaluate my own life
Hmm.
and make a pivot for my own family.
Huh.
So it was, my husband and I, prior to the world shutting down and me being pregnant in 2020 and having a baby in the middle of the pandemic.
Wow.
I feel like our life was like glamorized. Like I would travel with him to New York and
Mm-hmm.
Vegas and Atlanta and all these, fun places where we would like sip and shop and, this life where we had our older kids like half the time. So we would travel when we didn't have them
Mm-hmm.
and back. And then once our son was born and we had to, live full-time parenthood life,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't glamorous anymore. We tried to get back to the old us at first.
Uh-huh.
It was a shit show. I'm not gonna lie. Like
Yeah.
I was postpartum. I was trying to get my body chemistry and physique back to normal. And, my husband had these different opportunities. And it was just, I'm like, we can't do this. Like we
Mm-hmm.
really hit like a rock bottom part in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what, like we did the brain scans and stuff. It was the best thing we could have ever done for ourselves.
Incredible.
Because it was like, drinks are gone. We can't do this anymore. It's
Yep.
not worth it.
Yep.
I'm like, I'm not, it's not fun and it's not glamorous.
No.
And what was it doing to our nervous system? So me seeing my brain scan, him seeing his,
Incredible.
understanding what it was doing to our bodies internally,
Yeah.
which I had never really been, a drinker, partied much,
Mm-hmm.
but like I said, it was glamorized. It was fun.
And it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why?
I don't know. I stopped over a year and a half ago.
Really?
Kind of on a whim. I was I was sick of how I was feeling.
Right.
And to look at me, I didn't think it was really having an impact on my life anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But when I stopped, my life exploded in all the best ways.
Right.
And it was profoundly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
Alcohol has an ability to keep you small. And I felt like the walls kind of stay here. Where the edge is. Without alcohol, I didn't know where the edge was. And I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
Right.
Right. I love that for you. And I didn't know that about you. So that's really cool and ironic. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I want to touch on that a
Mhm.
bit since it just came up. So it's perfect.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've realized this in your journey with it as well. Not only has it kind of transformed different social settings and whatnot, but it makes you realize, like, one of my husband's biggest things with it is like my father-in-law has Alzheimer's. And, like I said, we had just had a new baby. And I was like,
Mhm.
well, I have many years left.
Mhm.
And so I want to take this seriously now. Because knowing what we know about blood flow and inflammation and everything else, it's like,
Brilliant.
okay, well, it's definitely not going to slow the process down if I'm predisposed to anything like this. So he made the decision. I mean, he has like no drinks at all in 3 years.
Incredible.
So super proud of him. Very
Yeah.
incredible. I've dabbled here and there. Like I
Uh-huh.
went to actually New York in March, had a couple drinks with girlfriends one day and a couple drinks the next day, literally just like 2,
Yeah. What
maybe
did you
3.
think?
I felt so brain dead and disgusting. I go home, I'm like, I literally cannot think. I
Right.
cannot. I feel so slow. I
Mhm.
feel sluggish. My
Mhm.
body feels inflamed.
Mhm.
And it's almost like, you have to add it back in to realize you don't want it.
Absolutely.
And
Played that
so,
game.
yeah, exactly.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, I'm one of those people, and I think because of just my history with the rigid boundaries and eating disorder and stuff like that, I try not to ever set any hard limits and
That's
like
smart.
never myself.
Mhm.
Because I grew up very much like, I'm never going to be like them. I'm never going to, and it's like, okay, that backfires.
Mhm.
It's not healthy
because you're
either.
focusing on the never.
Right. And it's like,
and
it's
then
not
you kind of
healthy.
bring that closer to you.
Right. So I never. So it was interesting because my husband kind of sat back and he was like, and I noticed I was a little reactive in the way that I was handling life and getting back into it. And I'm like, I don't understand how I did it before.
Hmm.
I mean, maybe because I sweated out so much because I was a maniac and worked out like 3 times a day or something. But my adrenals were shot.
I bet.
I mean, just from life in general, but it's just thinking.
It's really hard in the system.
It is.
Mhm.
It's hard in the system, but it's so socially acceptable.
It is. Strangely, although it's interesting, I don't know if you read in the New York Times recently and maybe another newspaper, that many of the nightclubs in Brooklyn are shutting down.
Oh.
And a big part of that is because younger people aren't drinking.
I love this. And I have tried all of those fun, like Saints, or like all the fun mocktails that are out there. And because I've noticed socially, like, hey, I don't need to drink to have a good time. I'm bubbly and like talkative and all the things anyway. I know it's very different for some people. It helps them open up. It helps them relax. And it's like, well, I've gotten to a place in life. I'm like, no, I need to do something to go and relax. And I don't think it's in alignment. Like,
Brilliant. I love that.
some things you have to do, like
Yeah.
graduations and like big
Sure.
parties. But I've found that even at first, I remember taking the approach of, no, I'm not drinking. Like,
hmm
are you pregnant? No, I'm just actually not drinking. I just don't feel like it. It makes people uncomfortable sometimes.
It does. And then they start talking about how what their drinking is or defending it in somehow
Yes.
like you're not drinking says something about their drinking.
Yes. And
Yeah.
it was like,
Yeah.
hey, you do you. And I
Right.
generally
Staying in
don't
my
care.
lane.
Like, I just don't care. I'm not judging you.
Yeah.
I'm just making a choice not to do that.
Right. Right.
And it's been a really interesting road.
Has it? What have you learned?
I've learned that having a very influential personality, I think it's had a trickle effect on my entire friend group.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like they've seen like, wow, okay, like I don't really need to drink for that either. And
Mm-hmm.
does it really serve me? And do I feel good afterwards? And I feel like me and all my friends are in this like, late 30s, early 40s, perimenopausal phase of
Mm-hmm.
life anyway. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like we just need to do the best we can to stay sane and help our bodies and regulate anyway.
Yeah.
So I think it's like a lot of things at once. I don't think it's just that.
Yep.
But I do feel like it's really giving people permission to make different decisions.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
not like everyone has to stop cold turkey, but also
No, it
not
has a
judging
ripple.
themselves either. And this is my
Right.
whole philosophy. Hey, if you're going to go have a cocktail, go have a cocktail.
Absolutely.
But if you're going to go and you're going to have a cocktail and you're going to shame yourself and you're going to guilt yourself,
Mm-hmm.
don't do that.
Right.
It's not
Right.
worth it. It's like it could be the same for chocolate cake. It doesn't have to be alcohol.
Yeah.
It could be any of our life choices.
Absolutely
So
agree.
yeah, I think honestly, the biggest thing I've learned is clarity though.
Mm-hmm.
Like in understanding how much more calm and settled, and life is overstimulating enough
Yeah.
in my world,
Yeah.
in the world,
I was going to say
my
that. The
world,
world.
all of it, and it's really allowed my husband and I mean, let's see, our oldest was 15, the other 13 and 12.
Mm-hmm.
Those are really
That's intense.
vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
intense ages.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for them to watch us make extreme life shifts
That's incredible.
in that time frame, and for them to see like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, like Crystal and Dad or Mom and Matt, like they
Mm-hmm.
are so much more chill and
Mm-hmm.
present,
Mm-hmm.
not even just like in conversation, but just in life.
Yeah, it's a huge lesson for
We're
them.
not going out and just to go out,
Mm-hmm.
and we enjoy being home more.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, it's not really fun when you have a little one. Like,
No.
and before, I think the reason it worked is because we would do it without our kids. I mean, not that we never had drinks around our kids,
Mm-hmm.
but it was almost like living a double life.
Right. Right.
But we don't have that anymore. So it's like, okay, what is this singular life? What does this look like for us?
Right.
And it's really allowed us to go inward. I wouldn't have been able to do the deep healing work and facing all the things if I would have kept alcohol and even caffeine. I mean, there were 2 years I didn't paint my nails. I didn't have coffee. I didn't have alcohol. I didn't. I mean, I went through, after the brain scan, I went through a
Yeah.
literal detox. I went vegan for a while. I took out all meat. I remember I had to add it back. I took out all high intensity exercise, and just allowing my body to shed all
Mm-hmm.
I essentially tried to rewire everything and drop all the previous conditioning.
And then you can re-add as you choose.
What feels good, what doesn't feel good. I started learning about my cycle and how to balance eating and
Uh-huh.
exercise. And like, oh, why didn't we learn this in 7th grade when we should have learned this? Because I could have really utilized this my whole life.
Absolutely.
And like as a woman, it's, you see those memes that pop up. It's like, oh yeah, my period came today. I'm not really like crazy.
That was it.
Right.
I know.
But understanding like how to treat your body, how to nurture yourself
Mm-hmm.
through these different phases.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I feel like I've learned so much from it, but
Yeah.
particularly to release attachments and to stop identifying. So I realized I was so identified with being a fitness professional and being
Mhm.
super fit and attached to the idea that I needed to be this all the time, to whether it was for worthiness or more of like proving it to myself, I think,
Right.
because that was something that got me through life.
So you shed a lot of ego
A
in a lot of
lot of ego.
ways.
Well, and I mean
Interesting.
all the great books. Eckhart
Uh-huh.
Tolle, I think, is A New Earth and The Power of Now and
Uh-huh.
Michael Singer, all the surrender books, all of
Yeah.
the my roommate, my mind. Dr. Shefali, who's amazing. Have you
Uh-huh.
read her book?
I have
Radical. Oh,
not. I
you
have
love
not.
it. So yeah, really letting go of ego and getting back to my true authentic self.
Right. And
And
those
knowing when the ego is coming in.
right, right. And it will keep coming in,
Of
and
course.
we just have to remind ourselves generously and courageously and compassionately to return home to self.
Hmm. Well, and we're all living the human experience, right?
Exactly.
So
Right. Right.
there's a little bit of that that's going to trickle in here and there. Like, I'm
Yeah.
really proud of my kid.
Hmm.
Well, it's like, wow, I'm really honored that I've gotten to witness this beautiful soul that I got to bring into the earth. You know, it's like, sure, they're not mine.
I don't own
I was
it.
just the portal. I like, you know, it's like we
Right.
could really, my husband and I laugh all the time. We like really pedal it back sometimes and laugh at each other when we say things like that. But what is it, you know, what has it taught you? What is this all like your sober journey and what
Mhm.
you're doing in life? What is this all really, and where do you feel like it's going for you?
It's switched quite a bit in the last couple of years,
Hmm.
actually. I think first dropping alcohol has allowed me to get in touch with myself
Hmm.
and my more than my capacity. Just really, like I said to you before, I didn't know I knew where the edges were, and without it, everything seems boundless, which was uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And now it's not. I am saying yes to the things that are in alignment, and I'm doing things I never would have done before, and that's where I feel most alive. So alcohol has allowed me more expansion, more, but not in a consumption kind of way.
Hmm.
Just um, owning where I want to be
Hmm.
and how I want to be in an authentic way. And then beyond that, there's this. I've always been intuitive. I knew that from a very young age, and putting alcohol down didn't right of way shift that. But I'm now hearing things you're going to
Hmm.
say before you say them.
Yep. Hmm.
That part of me that pulled me to be a therapist, that pulls me to be here with
Hmm.
you. You know, the email I sent on a whim,
Hmm.
and then you called me and said, "Oh, I'm going to be here." That just happens. We needed to change a time for something. It just happened.
Happened.
Things just open up.
Right.
There's no I'm learning not to push pull
Right.
also. And when I'm more open and aligned with self, I can hear everything.
Hmm.
And that sometimes is a little terrifying. There's moments where I can meditate and drop into self, get to my third eye where I feel part of everything.
Hmm.
And then this feels like there's this portal. And do I keep going? And if I keep going, will I still exist? I don't know what to do with that. In a way, I kind of stopped myself in the way I think I was stopping myself with alcohol,
Hmm.
unwittingly knowing.
Right.
So I'm playing with a lot of that spiritual stuff lately.
You definitely heard what was in my mind because that was exactly what I was going to ask you. How do you feel like your spiritual connection has
Mm,
been since? Because for me and my husband, I can speak for him. I know he wouldn't mind. I mean, for us, it's been like download after download after, like you just know,
yes,
the path is clear
no doubt.
and understanding. And I think it really takes some deep unraveling and getting through things to know that inner knowing
Hmm.
is different than the voice in the head.
Yes.
And knowing that I always know the voice in the head when it's the voice in the head or the roommate, as Michael Singer would call it, that it's something fear based. Like if
Yes.
something's coming up
Hmm.
that has like fear or hesitation but you just know, like with the gut feeling, the intuition, like it's your inner knowing, you can hear things. And
Hmm.
sometimes, it's hard to describe because it's a feeling you have
Hmm.
when you know it's safe.
Yes. Yeah.
Like it's a feeling you have.
Absolutely. It's a screaming green light without seeing it.
Hmm.
Um, but the you mentioned the fear, the voice inside. For me, it can be fear, all the things, the stories I tell myself that hold me
Hmm.
back. But it could also be um, like something I want, like the
Hmm.
push. And I keep learning that lesson.
Hmm. Yeah.
How did I get here again?
Right.
But then that, and for me, that's kind of egos in the way.
Yeah.
But I love that place I can get to where I feel, divinely connected to everyone and everything.
Yeah.
And it's fleeting, but I like to keep coming back to it.
I love it. And like you mentioned, like today just totally worked out. And
Yeah.
even our approach to today, I'm like,
Mm.
okay, great. You're going to be in Tampa. I'll block this amount of time. We'll start with coffee. We'll see where the day goes. I'll book the studio just in case. We ended up flipping it, and here we are.
And I think if we had coffee first, we wouldn't have been having this conversation. We would have had this conversation over coffee and wished we had filmed it.
Exactly. And that's just that level of authenticity and inner knowing, just trusting the process.
Absolutely.
And just trusting, okay, it's in alignment. It's supposed to be here.
Yes. And I think that's sometimes where we can go awry, that trusting the process involves vulnerability. And that, for me, is profoundly difficult. So then the fears or the trying to control comes in and all of that. And if I can take a breath and say, all right, this is all happened anyway. I really have no control.
Right.
And just allow, well, then I can feel a lot better. And it all happens exactly the way it needs to be. Even the things I think, get angry about, or this went wrong. It's all an opportunity. It's all a gift.
Right. There are always lessons and opportunities and for growth and evolution in any situation. And I think it's a really great, appropriate time to bring this up, as a practitioner, as someone who helps others. Like, you still experience life. You still get angry. You still have your moments of emotion. And it's interesting to me that, there's obviously no places, like, it's not like healing is not a destination. Like, there's no, like, I'm healed. Like, my talk therapist or life coach, whatever you want to call her. And I joke about this all the time. Every time I'm like, everything's smooth sailing, but I'm keeping space open for pivoting, keeping it open for pivoting. Because if I ever were like, you know what? Oh, nothing can trigger me now. It's like, oh, yes, sister. Like, but it's allowing yourself to still be a part of the human experience.
Yes.
And exposing that vulnerability, that's life.
Right.
And that's I think the beauty of talking about this and even having a podcast, it's letting people know, like, it's okay.
It's going to happen. If you got to give yourself grace.
Yes.
The other day, looking for my daughter's passport, she can't find it anywhere. I was enraged for about an hour. Enraged. She asked me a question, I answered it, but I was super snarky. I was like, I'm not being honest here. I'm just being nasty. So, the leading with love, I went off track for a moment, bring myself back.
But I'm sure you held yourself accountable. You owned your shit, and you guys worked through it.
Owned the shit.
And that's just it, in life and relationships. And that, I feel like, has been the biggest part of the journey. Like, to get back to earlier, like, what have I learned through all of this is accountability. Yeah. Like, that is the key.
Yes.
Until I started holding myself accountable for the way I felt, for the way I was reacting to life, the way I was responding to life, the way I was behaving, the way I was perceiving, all the things.
Yeah.
And stopped projecting it and making it someone else's stuff.
Right.
That was the game changer.
100%. I always say to people, you can't change anyone else, but there's a secret.
I damn sure tried.
Well, you can. You can.
By leaving them alone.
Right. By changing you.
Yes.
You change that system, the family, the relationship, the guy at the takeout, is having a bad day. By changing you and approaching in a different way changes everything around you and changes others.
Yeah. And I don't think I would have been able to do that if I would have stayed on the, social drinking path. I think that was something that really just helped me let go of it. Because I think for me, it was one of those things that, stuff comes up. Like, if we want to get to the science of it all, if you consume any sort of like substance in your body, it's going to dull your level of consciousness, your intuition, and then like old stuff might surface. But I really feel like allowing myself that space and time to be clear gave me the different perspective and I let go of anything I could do better because I knew I was doing my best.
I let go of anything I could do better.
anything I could do better, like the thought of I could do this
Yes.
better
Yes.
because I knew I was doing my best, if that
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah.
So
Don't let perfection or
right.
the
Oh,
or
I
the
was
pursuit of it get in the way of
and I was
good
a
enough.
seeker of perfection all the time. And
Right.
for what? Because no one's perfect.
No,
But it was like, if
you'll
I can
fail every
control
time.
this, if I
Yeah.
can control the way I look, if I can control how much I do today, or how clean the house is, or how big the party is, or
Mm-hmm.
how cool the gift is we give someone, it's going to be, no,
Mm-hmm.
like, because guess what? Like, no one else really cares.
No. And what if it was all okay, just as it was?
Yeah. And I think
That's
one
a
of
relief.
the Four Agreements book, have you read that book?
I have not.
Oh, it's so great.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about, I forget the name of the guy. I'll have to send it to you.
Mm-hmm.
But doing your best and knowing that your best is different on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew, like, if I showed up my best self, if I nurtured my body in the right way, whether that was
Mm-hmm.
rest or eating carbs before workout or after
Mm-hmm.
workout, or if it was sitting down and really being attentive, helping my kid with homework, and just filling my cup in ways that I knew I was doing my best, not half assing,
Right.
not being halfway in a conversation and looking at my phone and trying to answer questions, or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
checking emails at stoplights, and like being intentional, getting back to being
Yes.
intentional.
Yeah.
That's when I think it really also started to change,
Mm-hmm.
because it gives you that different level of ownership.
Yeah, I love that too. I mean, I was thinking, well, what if my best is like too hard to get to in one day, or that feels like too much? But
Hmm.
it varies depending on my capacity, depending if I slept enough, or I
Right.
exercised, or I
Yeah.
nourished, or
Or if you're traveling, or
mm-hmm,
if you're
mm-hmm,
overstimulated, you have a big
mm-hmm,
event. And like in my a few different aspects of life, I feel like, but part of my life is community events.
mm-hmm,
So a big community event, speaking in front of hundreds of people.
mm-hmm.
And I know that after those big event days, I need to have
Little
my calendar
hangover.
as clear as possible.
Yep.
I need to ask for help picking up the kids after school.
Mm-hmm,
I know that my best self needs to rest,
mm-hmm,
because I need to energetically cleanse and is it always possible? No.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes I have to go through car line and do all the things, and can't utilize all of my resources.
mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of, okay, so what are the next steps? Pivoting, like, I know a long shower is going to help if I can't do the other things, and
Right.
just finding really what works for you in those everyday kind of micro healing moments.
Taking care
Like,
of yourself like you would someone you love.
exactly. So what does that look like for you? What are your kind of daily routines and rituals and micro healing things? Like, is it getting outside? I know for me, I love to
Mm-hmm.
get outside and put my feet in the grass or move my
Yeah.
body in some sort of way. I don't schedule it as crazy as I used to, but
Good for you.
just really adapting to and listening to what I need that day.
Mhm, mhm. I like to get enough sleep.
Hmm.
I am kind of a little crazy around sleep.
I
So
love that.
so I think that's where it starts, or a lot of the foundation, but
Hmm.
I love to be out in the water, out in
Hmm.
nature, walking a dirt road, hiking.
Hmm.
I wanna move my body on the regular, so
Hmm.
usually the morning we'll start with that. Um, and water, 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 whether right, on the boat, at the beach.
Hmm. In the shower, in the bathtub, and like
Yeah.
any type of water
Yeah,
is
and
super
doing what I
soothing.
do.
Hmm.
It's not work.
Right.
It's people ask me all the time, how do you listen to those stories? How do you listen to people all day?
Hmm.
It's not listening to those stories. It's I may hear some horrific things. That's not
Hmm.
what I take with me, because we're transforming something and everything changes energetically. What really I leave my work with is energized most of the time.
Hmm.
There are those moments where there are stories that might stay stuck a little bit.
Hmm.
But so my work, my passion, my first love, trauma and addiction, the work that I
Hmm.
do in the world, that feeds me.
I love that.
Yeah.
And that's so important. And again, that shows that you are on the path
Hmm.
that is appropriate for you in this moment, in this
Yes.
lifetime.
Yes. And
And
like you've said, also knowing when it's too much in the
hmm.
days where I can pull back or do less.
Hmm.
And that's really important too.
And how do you really get to the point where you're feeling or you're knowing it's too much? What does that kind of look like, feel like for you?
Um, when I notice that I don't want to do the work that day,
Hmm.
right? And then I know, oh, maybe next week or tomorrow I need to make extra space where I'm not serving others.
Hmm.
So it's a very clear, because it doesn't happen very often.
Right.
But it comes loud and clear.
And then how do you find that you cleanse yourself, shift the energy, come back to you after a long work day?
Mm-hmm.
Or taking on, and actually had another friend, Lisa Klein, who is a therapist, and we talked about this as well, and just the importance of kind of honoring you. And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, you can't always like clear your day because people are depending on you that day.
Absolutely.
You
It's true.
you want to follow through, because again, that's showing up as your best self and
Yes.
following through with your word.
Yes.
But how do you if it's a day that's too much, and how do
Mm-hmm.
you cleanse through?
A lot of times, most of the time, it's in my office is generally at home these days. Last session ends and I take time for myself. I know, a family member needs something, a daughter needs something else. Phone calls need to be responded to, texts needed to be dealt with. I'll leave it all alone and I'll take a few minutes. And that is a really good transition moment for me between what I was doing for others, acknowledging myself, taking a breath, and then I can go back out.
Yeah. I love that. And I really want to emphasize the importance of giving yourself that space to transition. It is really important, whether that be stepping outside and getting a breath of fresh air and just standing in the sunlight for a minute. Like, it's funny, I did a podcast. You would love my friend Jen Smith, by the way. She's one of the, and we did a podcast on what are you going to do about it? Like, she's very straightforward. You would love her. You just need to come down and spend more time.
I will do that.
Yes, we have to plan this out. But I was doing 2 podcasts back to back, which I hardly ever do. But I was like, oh, I'm already doing one. Let's do one, because she and I really wanted to get a second one in. And she walked in. She's like, all right, you need to go outside and get your sunshine for a second, and then we'll come back in. I was like, you know me too well. Like, you know me too well. And that's just it. Like, knowing that even if it's a quiet car ride or
the tunes cranked up and singing at the top of your lungs.
Yes, with the windows down and the hair blowing and whatever that means for you.
Right.
Or, like tapping my chest and just getting some physical movement out. If I'm sitting in front of my computer all day, taking a brain break, taking a movement break. But giving myself permission to not have that instant response, because we're very driven like that these days. It's like everything has to be like immediate. It's like, but it really doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
If someone emails you at 9 a.m., you don't have to get back to them at 9:06.
No.
You can get back to them at 2:30. You can get back to them the next day.
I was going to say that. Is
like,
that radical?
No. Like, you don't have to, because guess what? It gives them the opportunity to find some space and time for themselves and compassion and understanding, and give them permission to do the same thing.
Right. And what I love about that too is you're teaching others how to react or to be with you, which is I'm not going to be at your beck and call every, as soon as the text comes through.
Right.
I'm going to be known as the person who responds in 2 hours or tomorrow, and nothing's wrong.
And I think now my people are probably like, she's probably outside with her feet in the grass or hanging in a tree somewhere. That's okay. And I probably am. And that's okay too.
That's so great.
But it's really, and I do want to touch on that a bit. And I'm sure you've experienced it in your practice and people you work with. Like, how do you coach people through navigating boundaries and setting these healthy boundaries for their own mental health and healing and processing? I mean, just thinking about my high schoolers. Right. They're walking around, they have their AirPods in, they're on Snapchat, they're trying to listen to their teachers. They have 4 minutes to get to the next class. It's like, do you really learn anything like that? No. No way. Like, we're just memorizing. We're taking tests. And it's like, well, what's it all for? That we're going to spend how much money sending them to college to do the same thing? And it's like, but like, it's so overstimulating right now. More so than ever. And we're not built for this.
No, not at all.
Like,
Too
we're
much
not built
information.
for this.
Nope.
So how do you coach people on that?
I mean, I think what I found is maybe what you found, which is if I tell people, that doesn't really bring about any change. I might be able to see it very clearly, with an ex-abusive husband or with a demanding, boss or something, or a friend who is just boundaryless.
Right.
But But ultimately, I don't feel like they're going to listen to the advice or what I think the
Mhm.
boundaries would be. It really begins with self,
Mhm.
right? Coming back to what feels good to you. What are your rhythms?
Mhm.
And once you can listen to that and get in touch with that, then the boundaries with others become clear. Same thing, with self-love. I can't tell
Mhm.
someone how to love someone else.
Right.
It really starts with self.
Mhm.
But I can guide them into self and find that for themselves, and then that radiates outward.
I love that.
Mm, thanks.
Yeah, I really love that because it's really, I mean, just think of like parenting, for example.
Hmm.
I lost all respect for adults around me when I was adolescence age because I'm
Hmm.
like, who are you to
Right.
tell me how to live when you're treating your body and your mind and you're not connected to your, like, who the hell are you to tell me how to live and
Hmm.
act and what to do? And so I just, again, started the rigid boundaries. But I knew, and I think it was part of that intuitive like push that everything had to change all at once
Right.
for me and my husband during this
Yep.
phase of sitting in our shit.
Hmm.
But he knew too. He knew he wanted to change and needed to make some shifts. And I know I wanted to. And together we knew we needed to, create a healthier atmosphere. And just so happened to be when my children
Mm,
were the age I was when I started to lose the respect. And that,
interesting.
it's interesting. And I'm sure you've seen this pattern a lot is like
Hmm.
we internally get these, and I have like chili bumps right now all over
Mm.
and my eyes are watering, but we internally get called
Uh-huh.
when we hit those life shift
Hmm.
ages and patterns.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
we internally, you call it like spirit alignment,
Yeah.
guides telling you how to go, you're guided, you're protected, you can do the shift.
Hmm.
And it's a matter of taking the stillness, the time to set back and trusting the process of that
Right.
because
Right.
it's real.
It is. It is. And if you don't follow it, you will feel the anxiety come up, the
Mhm.
rage, the discomfort, the
Mhm.
disease,
The regret, the
the regret.
shame, the
Right.
guilt, all the
It's
things.
so true.
All the
Hmm.
things that, and that's actually something I want to touch on.
Yeah.
Shame.
Okay. Bring
Let's
it
talk
on.
about it. Let's talk about it. And how, what I've realized is like I was holding so much shame for people that it wasn't my stuff to carry.
Hmm.
So I held shame of like how, my mom portrayed herself when I was younger or my family when I was younger. And it's like they loved me unconditionally. They did the best they could with the tools that they had at the time. Now I know that.
Sure.
But I remember growing, I actually went home and I was reading this thing I wrote in like fourth grade.
Hmm.
And I'm reading it and I'm like, this isn't all true.
Huh. Interesting.
So I would put tidbits of real life
Huh.
and then tidbits of what I wanted life to look like.
Uh-huh.
And it was like, oh, bless
Mm.
her heart. Like
Yeah.
she had so much shame. Like she
Yeah.
didn't want to tell her life story.
Right.
She
Hmm.
didn't want to talk about how her dad died and her mom came in and out and, she
Hmm.
was raised by her grandparents.
Hmm.
So it was interesting that I gave a little bit, but then I portrayed it to be what I think people wanted to hear
Right. And
or
it
what
quick.
I thought. And people don't care. It was
No.
me holding the shame around that. So that was something that really took me back to, it was
Hmm.
like one of those almost unexpected things. I was like,
Hmm.
wow, I don't remember writing this.
Huh.
But I'm like, oh, bless her heart.
Yeah. Now
You
you can
know?
now you can heal her.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I wrote her a letter. I've written myself at all different ages letters. Usually like
Hmm.
I feel like for me it's happened in sevens.
Hmm.
Big life events at 7,
Not
at
surprised.
14, at 21, at
Hmm.
28.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Doesn't it take 7 years for our body to
Mhm.
completely regenerate? Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's
Hmm.
like I'm literally been a
Hmm.
different person.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, I've made huge life shifts. Like at 7, I made the decision to live with my grandparents full time. I didn't want to live with my mom at all.
Hmm.
At 14, I completely cut my mom out of my life until I was 21. I revisited
Wow.
and circled back. And then I was like, okay, this still isn't going to work in the healthy dynamic that
Hmm.
it's supposed to work in.
Hmm.
28, got a divorce from my first husband.
Wow.
35, had my son, started this whole deep journey. So it's like I have literally
Incredible.
made huge shifts. So I'm like,
Yeah.
oh God, what does 42 look like? Like I got 2 years, hopefully.
Good stuff.
Right?
Good stuff.
All good stuff. I'm excited. So shame.
Yeah.
Getting like, how would you just give me your perspective on it?
Well, I was thinking about the difference between shame and guilt, and I
Right.
kind of wanted all of us to be on the same page.
Yes.
Guilt is I did something wrong.
Right.
Shame is I
I am
am
wrong.
wrong,
Yeah.
right? I'm not worthy. I'm
Mhm.
not good enough. I'm
Mhm.
not lovable. And
Mhm.
those deep, I would say, irrational negative beliefs that
Mhm.
we take on in childhood as a way to survive. Because to
Right.
believe that mom can't take care of me
Mhm.
is to really think, I mean, that's too terrifying because if
Mhm.
mom can't take care of me, therefore, I mean, can I live? Am I going to
Right.
die? Right.
Mhm.
So you take that on yourself.
Right.
I'm not lovable.
Mhm.
I'm not good enough for her to show up for me or whatever that
Right.
story is. Of course, then you see it, we bring that into adulthood, we hold
Mhm.
on to it, and you can see that wreak havoc on our lives all
Mhm.
over the places.
And trickle into all of our relationships and the people or partners that we choose and the
Absolutely.
friends that we choose, the environments we get ourselves into.
Right. So, I
Yeah.
mean, like with everything else, I think you've heard me say,
Mhm.
I would say, what does shame have to share with you? What
Mhm.
does she want you to know? How
Mhm.
old is shame? What does she look like?
Mhm.
Where do you feel her in your body?
Mhm.
And then ultimately, once you've really connected with her and you've empathized with her and you
Mhm.
sat with her for a while,
Yes.
then what do you need from me? Where
Right.
do you want to be in this world? Do you want to stay in the shame back in the
Mhm.
house you grew up in? I can't tell you how many parts of myself I pulled out of that house on 3 Upland Road in Needham.
Mhm.
Tons of them. And
Mhm.
imagine there's still more coming.
Yeah.
But each time I pull one out of that house and give her liberation and freedom, I become freer.
It's gonna make me
No.
cry. Same. And
You've been
writing.
there.
Oh, I've been there. I've done all the things. And writing, I've found that writing her letters,
I love that.
whether it's a hey, this is what your life actually is gonna turn out to be.
Right?
And
Yeah.
you're gonna utilize all of the things that you're holding right now
Yes.
to help so many people.
Yes. Yes. Um,
And that for me is the internal driving system. And I think if there's
mhm.
anything that I really want people to hear from this today is you can make all of the ugly, anything that's ever you've experienced in your life, you
Anything
can
you've
pay it
done.
forward
Mhm.
and you can help so many people.
Absolutely. No
But
doubt.
it takes the courage to face it
Yes. And feel it.
and feel it.
And feel it.
So if there's anything that you really want to emphasize or you want people to hear you on, what would that be today?
Oh, so many things. But if there's one thing I could say, slow down, be curious. And there's nothing that is beyond transformable if you give it space. If you give it space, everything is transformable if you give it space
That is so true.
through connection to
It is.
self and others. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you for this lovely
Oh,
connection.
you're welcome. And honestly, that actually brought it up for me. And I feel like
Hmm.
I should say this to
Hmm.
wrap it all up. But I think my mom is a perfect example of that.
Hmm.
She had to go to prison to find her space,
Hmm.
but she came out of that and she's paid it forward.
Wow.
She has transition houses where she has curriculum to help women who have been through prostitution and trafficking and prison. And she goes and speaks to people on death row and
Wow.
gives them kind of a little bit of life
Hmm.
and forgiveness for themselves, regardless of what the outcome is. So,
Incredible.
it's healed my relationship with her for giving her the space to be herself and do
Hmm.
her thing,
Hmm.
knowing walking through forgiveness, knowing that whatever she did when I was a kid had nothing to do with me, and knowing that it was up to me with how I responded to all of that.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So I think that you probably had a similar experience with your own upbringing and things, and just
Hmm.
knowing, like, you know what, you had to own your part.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And
awesome.
do it with grace.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like we could talk for like 4 hours.
I would love to.
I know. We're going to do this again. Okay. We're
Yes.
going to have a part 2. And I feel like we need to collab on something
Yes,
fun.
please. Go deeper.
So,
Let's go
yes, go
deeper.
deeper. We're going to go deep. And yes, I feel like there is all kinds of fun stuff coming for us. So thank you, Tammy, for joining me today and for being a part of this crystal clear journey. And I feel like this is just the beginning.
It's an honor. You're magic, girl.
Oh, thank you.